Hey, it's Ben Solomon, and welcome to this episode of the Techno Leadership Show. And in this episode, we're going to be talking about how to research and understand the value that you as a person bring into your next level role in the technology industry. So, as we spoke in the previous episode, doing a personal SWOT analysis is one of the first things you've got to do to understand what your strengths are, what your weaknesses are, what opportunities are there in your environment, and what threats you face as a person. And once you understand these things, and once you understand your strength, the quality that you bring, the experiences that you bring, you'd be able to position yourself correctly. But in addition to that, you'd also have to research the business and the industry that you're wanting to get into. What is the value that you actually bring to them? Because the same role, same name, designation, whatever it might be, has different values in different industries. In one industry, your value might be, let's say, $60,000 a year. In another industry, same role description as such, or even the name of the role, but the kinds of things that you have to deal with and kind of value that you bring to the business overall would be much higher. So you'd get paid, let's say, $120,000 a year. So you have to understand these things before you start applying, because when you do get into that interview and when you're asked what's your expectation in terms of salaries or benefits, you need to have an idea of the value that you bring in so that you don't undercut yourself, knowing that you have to give a lot more out of yourself. For example, if your role in a particular industry has after hours work that's specified, and weekend work, on call, all those sort of things, there has to be some sort of give there. So, if you understand the industry and if you understand the function that you'd be playing in there and the value that you'd be bringing in, you can then negotiate appropriately in such a manner that you feel like you are getting what your skills, your knowledge, and your time that you put in is worth. So that's the thing you have to do beforehand, before you go into these interviews. So as I said in the previous episode, do your SWOT analysis to understand what you bring. Do the tests like psychometric testing. I believe in that because it's not just doing one test and having the answer, but doing multiple so you can get a common thread of your strengths and thereby the value that you bring to the business that you are applying for a role in. So once you understand that, doing things like the Myers-Briggs type indicator, Colby A index, Enneagram, DISC, Strengths Finder, BARC, via character strengths. These are some of the many psychometric tests out there, but if you do most of these ones, looking across the board, looking at the reports that you get from each of them, you can see what your common threads are, and rather than letting it define you, at least you know where you're starting from, and if there's anything that you need to work on so that you can do the best possible job in the role that you're wanting to get into. Then, as I said, speak to your current and past managers and colleagues to also get a feel for strengths that you exhibit, because a lot of the times things that are our strengths we do so naturally that we don't even think about it, we don't identify it, and we don't give it the kind of value and respect that it deserves. Not everyone can do things to the level of perfection and mastery that you can. You're different, I'm different, everyone has different strengths that we bring into whatever role that we go into. So, ask your colleagues, ask your previous managers or current manager, talk to them and figure out, what do you think I'm good at? And utilize that as part of your research process. And then look at your past experiences outside of work even. Work experiences, yes, you've got to look at, but what have you been exposed to outside of work? Have you led a team at, your religious organization? Have you led a team in a sporting organization or some other form? So you can bring those leadership skills from those other areas into the leadership position that you're wanting to go into. Having any of these sort of experience of leading people is very important. You can just, transfer that. These are transferable skills. And once you've done that, research the industries that you want to get into. Yes, you could be in engineering, IT, whatever, but you're going into an industry, let's say real estate, you might be going into medical, or you could be going into government, you could be going into transport industry, whatever it might be. Figure out what industries interest you. Because one of the things that I've felt is when I work in a company, in an industry that I feel like I'm adding value and matches my core values, I feel more fulfilled. So that helps a lot when you know that you want to go into a particular industry, because you feel like whatever work you do, you can see the end result of that work and the benefit that the end customer and the business benefits from. And if you feel that, there is a higher likelihood that you'll feel more fulfilled in the job that you're doing. Because at the end of the day, we all want to be on purpose, doing work that we can actually see the benefit for. Not, hidden somewhere, like you do the work, you don't see the benefit because you've moved on to the next project or the next customer without understanding the impact that you've had on that previous customer. So think about those things. What do you find fulfilling and enjoyable? And then try to understand the value that you bring in each of those industries. Like in the medical industry, there's a lot of governance, there's a lot of risk that you've got to mitigate and work with. So when you're going to management roles and leadership roles, the value that you bring to those organizations is much higher than your local, let's say, real estate agent store, So you've got to look at that. And then there is the size of the business. If it's $100 million a year business, the value that you bring in is going to be much bigger because you're dealing with a lot more. And if it's a business that's doing $10 million a year, it's proportionally smaller. You still have to do a lot of functions, yes, but the value that you bring to that business is different. So all of these things make, it is important in that final thing of being able to negotiate the right compensation for the work and the value that you bring in. So end of the day, look, we are paid for the value that we deliver, but we really need to understand and know the value that we're bringing in so that we can negotiate correctly, effectively. And that's the thing. And we don't want to be just arbitrarily accepting a salary or compensation plan just because that is quote unquote industry standard for, let's say, you're going into an IT operations manager role. The amount of risk that you have to mitigate, the amount of stress that you've got to deal with, all of that changes between an organization that's, let's say, doing $20 million a year versus an organization maybe even exactly in the same industry that's doing $100 million a year. There is a lot more that you have to deal with. So you have to be aware of this and see if it's worth it. Like if you're in the organization that's doing $20 million a year for the exact same position, you could be getting paid $100,000 a year. And in the organization that's doing $100 million a year, the same role, because of the extra stuff that you've got to deal with, you've got to look at it from that perspective and go, maybe it's worth $140,000, $150,000 a year. And knowing this, you're a better place to negotiate. It's also good to speak to recruitment agents who deal with those specific industries and those size of companies because they have a better understanding of what's the going rate, what their clients are paying, and what the people that they've helped get roles, like the ones that you're looking for, are getting paid as well. So you get a current reality check of what's being offered. So having all that equips you to be able to negotiate in a manner that's favorable to you and to your career. And then before applying for any job, my preferred option, as much as possible, is to call the person listed on the job ad. If there's no one listed, usually if you can do a search on LinkedIn, Google, on the company, and if it's a small company, usually the owner or the managing directors are involved in the process of recruitment. But if it's a bigger company, they might have an HR person or someone who's a contact for that particular department. So if you're going into engineering and tech, there's probably a engineering VP or someone higher up in the executive leadership position that you can contact and get an understanding for the company, the team dynamics, the value that each person brings in, how you affect the day-to-day running of the technology side of things and engineering side of things for the business. So you get a good understanding of how they function and if you are a match for them. And based on all of that, then apply for the job. And when you've had the opportunity to speak to someone in the organization, it helps you with your cover letter as well, because the cover letter is your marketing piece, basically saying, look, give me an opportunity to come in and be interviewed. So to ensure that you get in, you need to address the concerns that your potential manager is going to have. They're bringing someone in for a reason. If it's a newly created position, there's a reason that position's been newly created. So if you can address that in your cover letter, you've got much higher likelihood of getting an interview. And if it's a position where the previous person's either gotten promoted and gone up, or has left the company or leaving the company, again, it gives you the opportunity to understand the circumstances behind all that. And then you can position yourself as the right person for the job if you still wanted to take that job and apply for the job. So please do all this due diligence. It's for your own benefit. Researching the company, researching the industry, the value of the transactions, the revenue of the business, all of these things helps you understand the value that you bring to the business, and so that you can also negotiate compensation based on the value that you bring. So hopefully that's helped you with understanding this aspect of stepping up into a management and even senior tech role. And I wish you all the best on your career journey. And until next time, have a great day. See you soon.